For a hip hinge, we want this movement to come from the hips, closing almost like a door hinge. We want to make sure we're not depending on the back as we hinge and bend forward. Notice here I started with a hinge and then started depending on my low back to give me more depth. So we really want all this movement to happen at the hips. We want to start with a neutral spine. Hands can be on those bony prominences at the front of your pelvis for reference. And you can almost imagine a rubber band is pulling straight back as you hinge forward. We want this hinge to happen at the hips, and there can be a little bit of movement at the knee, but only enough that your hips are sent further backwards. If you're having a hard time telling whether or not you're utilizing your back instead of your hips, you can get a stick. I'm using the broom handle here, and place one hand on your hips and one hand on your head, so that as you hinge, you're keeping a neutral spine and this stick is staying in contact with both points. If you hinge forward and the bottom hand starts to lift off, you know you're rounding into your back, and we want to work on hinging backwards into the hips once again. Another helpful tool is to see whether or not you're hinging and opening up into the pelvis. You can hold your hands right on your sit bones and hinge forward. As you hinge, you should feel your hands pulled apart as your ischial tuberosities or your hip bones move as we're rounding. If you're hinging and those are not moving, then that means that you know you're rounding into your back. But my favorite is hands right on top of the hips. Please support us by liking and following for more.